Good morning. Welcome to Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Steve Runyon. I'm your worship associate today. How many of you have seen Phantom of the Opera on Broadway? Me too. Okay. We have, to start out, we have a few announcements this morning. Next Saturday at 11, Muff is presenting a drag story hour. And for more info on that, please visit Rome online. Of course, if you have a printed bulletin, you can't click the link. But if you go to Rome, you should be able to find it. The Fun Committee is hosting a comedy show also next Saturday at 2 p.m. That's going to feature Drew Hayes, Christine Frederick, Rita Morris, and David Landau. Drew, do you want to say anything? You look like you want to pitch in.
Come join us. We're going to have a fun show, and we want to have a full house, so come and have a good time.
Thank you. And big reminder, important reminder, next Sunday the 7th, May 7th, we are going to the summer schedule early. So there will be only one service at 10 a.m., and that will be carrying on through to Labor Day. Also happening next Sunday is the 100th anniversary of the Flower Communion. That's going to be led by Reverend Joel and the second and third grade RE classes. And after the 10 a.m. service, we're going to have a congregational meeting to vote on the ministerial search committee. So very big Sunday next Sunday. And we're going to have a special coffee hour to celebrate the Flower Communion. So mark your calendars and please come.
I'd like to welcome Candace Donaldson up for a special announcement.
Good morning. Good morning? Good morning. Ah, okay, that's much better. Thank you. So for those of you who were either here in person last week or online with us, you may recall I made a little bit of an announcement about our annual budget drive. And I told you that if you got your pledge in last Sunday, you would be entered into a raffle for $250 worth of gift cards to a local business. So during first service, we pulled the name, but the individual was not in first service. But I have been told they are here in second service. So, the winner of that raffle is Elizabeth Bain. Now, don't cry if you didn't win, okay? Because you have another chance. And those of you who didn't get your pledges in last Sunday also have a chance to be in the second raffle. You have to have your pledge in by next Sunday, May 7th. Now, I will tell you that on the first day we had 38 pledges, and that we are still climbing. We are about, I think we have about 50 pledges, maybe a couple more now. The last time I checked, we were about 50, and we have 40% of our budget met. So, those of you who don't have your pledges in, please get them in. Because though I love talking to all of you, I would rather be spending the time in the evenings with my wife and not on the phone calling you. So please get your pledges in. If you get them in by next Sunday, you'll be in the second raffle. And if you have any questions, if you're having any trouble getting it in, if you would like help with it, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me via email at stewardship@muuf.org or see me after the service. Or you can certainly call, whatever works. All right? So if you have any questions or have any trouble, please let us know. But please get your pledges in so we can plan for next year. Thank you.
I really appreciate the work Candace is doing for your annual stewardship campaign. One of the things I really am struck by as I listened to members of the fellowship talking about their work in justice is the spirit of generosity that I find here among you all. Your generosity, yes, of finances, but your generosity of spirit, your generosity of your hearts to each other and to the world at large. It's very moving, and I'm really glad I get to be a part of it here as your interim minister for the rest of this year and the next program year together. When I was growing up, I lived in comfortable circumstances, and I really didn't know much about the social differences that could happen. I lived in a neighborhood that was pretty uniform in its race and ethnicities, its cultures, its socioeconomic status. And my dad took me to lunch with my great Aunt Maggie. I was about 8 or 9. Now, my great Aunt Maggie at that time she was born in the 1870s. She'd seen a lot. She was pretty close to 100 when we went to have lunch with her. And she was what you would call poor. In fact, what I learned was that my whole family had lived as Aunt Maggie had. She just happened to have lived long enough that I got to meet her. But what struck me was when it came time for lunch, she only had 2 chairs and her table. My dad sat first because, in the way she understood things, the child could wait. I stood, waiting, kind of looking out a window, not understanding their conversation, and my dad ate, and then it was my turn to eat, and I sat with my Aunt Maggie, and there were hot dogs, and there were green beans. That was good. And then there were scalloped potatoes. Now, at 8, 9 years old, scalloped potatoes and cheese, just like, ew, who does that? Now, I love them now. Actually, I love them most for the memory that comes with them, but at the time, I was like, I'm not eating that. I ate the green beans, I ate the hot dogs. I talked with my Aunt Maggie a little bit, and finally she said, is there something wrong with the scalloped potatoes? And I said, no, Aunt Maggie. Well, why aren't you eating them? Oh, I don't like them. Wow. It doesn't matter whether you like them or not. It's food, and we're not going to waste food. Now, you eat those scalloped potatoes. And my Aunt Maggie there was a reason my Aunt Maggie had gotten to 100, even though she'd lived through 3 depressions, not just 1930, but 1898 and 1882, when I looked at my dad like, I don't want to eat the potatoes, Dad. And my dad's like, I'm not going against Aunt Maggie, man. So I ate the potatoes. But what I learned in that moment, I asked my dad later about why she insisted I eat the potatoes. And my dad had never mentioned. It was why I liked the idea of playing Phantom of the Opera at the beginning. How important it was for the character to not just remain hidden, a phantom, but to come alive. And the character comes alive because he loves, because he's connected to others. And when I learned about Aunt Maggie, I learned a lot of things about my family. My grandma, my beloved grandma, did not own a pair of shoes until she was 16 years old. Dad, how'd you get to school? What happened when it snowed? She wrapped her feet in an old cloth. My grandma, I know, hates it that I tell you that, but I'm proud of what my family was able to do, the hardships they endured, and what they were able to give me. But it also helped me understand that what happens to anybody in the community is not just about them. The sufferings of anyone are the sufferings of all of us. And it could be us at any moment that needs justice, that needs a meal, that needs love, that needs the light of hope. That's what I learned from having to eat cold scalloped potatoes many years ago. I'm so pleased to welcome you here to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship and our worship online. some folks in the library and here in person. Join me now as we light our chalice and say our affirmation.
Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Apparently, we haven't sung this hymn in a while because we actually don't have a slide for it. So I'm going to invite you to sing along with me. It is number 169 in the gray hymnals if you're here in person. We're going to need them this morning. We shall overcome. And if you're online, if you remember the words, great. And if you don't, we'll have them up on the screen the next time we sing together. Please stand in body or spirit. In the time for all ages, in the first service, some of the children came up and we talked a little bit about what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist and how to explain that to other folks. You know, when they're on the playground, sometimes they'll get that witnessing that some Christian folks like to do. Well, have you found Jesus? That was what I used to get asked. I really didn't understand what was happening, and I would say, was he lost? And who is he? I didn't know. And then they would say, well, what church do you go to? And I would say, well, I go to the Unitarian Universalist Church. Well, what do they believe? Well, that's kind of a weird question for us, kind of awkward for the kids. And I said, you know, we all have many different kinds of beliefs. I, for example, when I was your age, I didn't believe in a God. Later on, I found that I do believe in a God, but then I don't believe in a God. When I was in theological school, they made me write a paper on that, and I flunked it. I can't make those two things work. But still a Unitarian Universalist, and I can be in my spiritual home. So when you get asked that question, I said to them, and I say to you, what does your church believe? Well, we all believe many different things, but we ask one another to live from our beliefs well. Service is our law, some of the words we said in the affirmation this morning. We believe, in the old-fashioned language, we used to say, deeds, not creeds. We believe together in helping one another and making the world a better place. A milestone yesterday that was celebrated in this congregation was a memorial for the life of Russell Weldon Hawkins. He'd been a part of the life of this congregation back in the 1970s. I know his children who were here celebrating his life with his family and community talked about how it was to be children growing up here in the fellowship and being in the halls and classrooms and cared for by the people here. Russell Weldon Hawkins, his middle name, Weldon, his middle name was in honor of the author of the song that'll be played at as the postlude of the service, a hymn that is known as the African American anthem, a very important song that reflects the lives of people of color, of black people, African Americans. In these milestones that we celebrate, we remember how important it is, as was said yesterday about Russell Hawkins, how important it is to show up. This is showing up in its own way, recognizing that all of us come here at times with life experiences that are significant passages or significant milestones, joyful, sorrowful, maybe confusing, important, maybe just confusing or interesting. How we share it in this moment of ritual, but in all the ways we connect with one another, coffee hour, classes, the work of justice that you're about to hear about. Another way of showing up for one another, showing up for the world. I invite you into the spirit of contemplation or prayer or meditation now. Spirit of life, I watch the news and read about the world, and sometimes, well, like last week, Spirit of life, I've felt like just getting a good book and curling up and ignoring the world, or maybe getting myself a computer game or a PlayStation or something and just play games all day. Because it seems too much. And then I remember the love of family. I remember the love of a congregation. And I think about the love of a congregation here. How they're light, how they're calling. Their way of being together is not to live in that fear, that despair, that resignation. I don't want to be a phantom in spirit and in community. I want to be alive, and I remember that because I know I'm going to stand here before these people, my people. I know that if I truly want to live, to come fully alive, I can't live in that fear or despair. I will come alive in the knowing of others, seeing their faces, their loves, welcoming friends I've missed, finding friends who I longed to see, and see in their eyes and their care the lights of their spirits calling me past my own life even to this world, to the beauty of it, to truly see that the suffering of others could very well be my own. And that if I'm going to live, I have to be in the world and connect as widely as possible. And I feel called. And in the words I know we're about to hear, inspired. There's so much beauty that can be an answer to what is ugly or painful. Thank you, Spirit. And in the silence that follows, may we each find the beginnings of a call outside of our own selves to a larger world. Amen. So be it. Blessed be.
Good morning. I'm Franklin Heller. First, I want to assure everybody that this is not a capital campaign visit. There is another part of my life that I'm as passionate about, maybe more so, that attracted me to MUF, and that is social justice. You might not know it, but I am also that attracted me to MUF. But I want a chance to make a difference. You see, my mother was a German Jew born in Berlin in 1920. She was 13 when Hitler came to power. She lived through Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass in Berlin. Her father was wise enough to get her to England and into nursing school later that year, where she lived through the Blitzkrieg. The friends that saw her off from Berlin, Herbert Baum, Marianne Baum, Hella Hirsch, and Felix Heymann, were fighters for social justice. They were the Jewish resistance in Berlin, and they were executed and are memorialized in the only Jewish cemetery in Berlin. My father's family lived in the area of Russia now known as Ukraine and were affected by the pogroms that were so vividly depicted in Fiddler on the Roof, and they fled to England. My family's lives were disrupted because good people were complacent and did not step up to stop injustice. My parents weren't interested in doing the same. They had me and my siblings involved in the civil rights and anti-war movement in the 60s and 70s. When I was in college, I was involved against mandatory retirement for college professors because my favorite professor was being forced to retire at age 70. And the No Nukes movement motivated as the 3 Mile Island radioactive leak literally scared the bejesus out of me. I took classes in nonviolent civil disobedience and blocked the entrance to the New York Stock Exchange. Before I joined the fellowship, I was missing a community that had a strong commitment around social justice. And while we sometimes get focused on important internal matters like ministerial searches, operating budgets, and capital campaigns, we also have many members doing important work ensuring that we keep the rights that we may have taken for granted. Reproductive rights, immigration rights, helping to feed the hungry, LGBTQI plus rights, climate justice, and the list goes on. I would like this service to be a call to action, an opportunity for each and every one of us to search ourselves and ask, what more can I do? How can I make a difference in the world today and in the future? Now, I intend on leading by example, and I'll be involved as our lay representative to Morris Area Together, which works with other faith-based organizations, of which we are a founding member, on issues including housing insecurity, criminal justice reform, immigration rights, mental health, substance abuse, and climate justice. There's a recommitment ceremony that I'm looking to have other members join me at, along with Reverend Miller, this Tuesday night at 7 at Temple Brene, or I did tell the team that 10 of us will be there, so I'm counting on your support and commitment to help drive that change. As Graham Nash wrote eloquently in his song, Chicago, we can change the world, rearrange the world. It's dying to get better. Thank you.
We have now a reflection by Miles Gorman. She'll be speaking about LGBTQI activism and environmental activism.
Hey everyone, I'm Miles Gorman, she, they, and I'm an activist for a couple different social justice issues, primarily LGBTQ plus rights, climate change, and gun violence. I sometimes have trouble with complex social dynamics, empathy, or even feelings. This has led me to spend a lot of my time thinking about how to best use my life. Throughout the years, I've settled on a personal philosophy of net positive, to have a net positive effect on the world around me. I'm poor with processing the emotional part of an event or problem, but what I can do is work to fix it. This sense of civic duty is what first started my social justice work, with climate activism in 2019. I had attended the global climate strike in October, and I was starting to research the true scale of the climate crisis. I felt a kind of duty to just do something, and so I started going downtown with a sign that said, "On strike for climate." Obviously, this wasn't the most effective method of change, but I felt I had a civic duty to just do something. Since then, I've created the moniker the Strike Bike, and branched out to other causes important to me. The Strike Bike references my mobile billboard of a sign-covered bicycle. It's my way of making sure that I have a positive impact on the world. When tragedy strikes, I often don't feel that sad, or even when those around me are. I often feel guilty for not having that deep emotional response, when I feel like I should be. So I do what I know how to do. I work on fixing it. This is what inspired me to organize last year's walkout at Morristown High School after the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and the Proud to Say Gay campaign on social media after Florida passed the first iteration of its Don't Say Gay law. The best way that I can describe my social justice work is that I just try to fix things. If you're looking to start doing some activism, my advice would be to find a problem you care about and just throw yourself at it. Call representatives, make friends, and when it's necessary, get loud. I can't wait to see what change you'll create.
I invite you to sing with me. I invite you to stand in body or spirit as we sing, "We Are a Gentle, Angry People." And now we hear from Jamie Thal.
Hi, I'm Jamie Thal, and today I'll be speaking about reproductive justice. Reproductive justice, as defined by Sister Song, is the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, not have children, and to parent the children that we do have in safe and sustainable communities. Currently, I am the co-chair of UU Faith Action Reproductive Justice Task Force. I'm a member of the Thrive Coalition, a group of organizations working here in New Jersey around reproductive justice issues. My work is primarily focused on education and advocating for political and systemic change, primarily at the state level. I'm also one of the founding members of North Jersey Practical Support, a brand new organization that I'm super excited about that provides hotel stays, transportation, and other assistance to folks traveling to New Jersey for abortion care. Since the Dobbs decision last year, this work has taken on greater urgency. Just in the last few weeks, we have seen how even in states like New Jersey, with relatively strong abortion protections, The decision of one extremist judge in Texas can potentially ban the use of a trusted medication like mifepristone from the entire country. We should all be free to exercise our rights to bodily autonomy. These decisions should be made by individuals and their medical professionals without any interference from legislators or judges. And as always, the most vulnerable among us, people who are underinsured or uninsured, people who are undocumented, BIPOC folks, young people, and our rural neighbors are the ones for whom abortion access is often impossible. I believe it is my moral duty as a Unitarian Universalist to speak out against these discriminatory policies and practices and to advocate for change. Another way I do this work is I volunteer as a clinic escort. To me, social justice is a big part of my UU faith, and clinic escorting is a big part of my spiritual practice. I'm sure you've all seen the photos of angry protesters demonstrating in front of abortion clinics. What many people don't know is that these scenes play out every Saturday right here in New Jersey. And they are just as awful in real life as they are in the photos on the news. The harassment and intimidation protesters inflict on patients and their companions is intense and unrelenting. They carry signs with horrible graphic images. They chase patients down the street and surround them in their cars. They preach using portable amplification systems at a volume so loud that patients inside the clinic can hear them. They take photos and make videos of people coming inside the clinic. Once they even used a drone to try and film the waiting room upstairs. It is an assault, plain and simple, and for the most part, their activities are perfectly legal. When you make an appointment at the clinic, the staff tries hard to prepare patients and let them know that there will be protesters, but the vast majority of folks are completely overwhelmed by the chaos. Seeking abortion care is complicated and often very emotional on its own. We all take for granted that the medical decisions we make are private, and this is true for everything except abortion care. For people seeking care at a clinic, their abortion experience often includes being publicly shamed and harassed. My job as an escort is to try and help patients navigate the mayhem on the sidewalk and get them safely inside the clinic. It is fast-paced and intense work. I have just a few seconds to introduce myself to a patient to let them know that I'm there to help. It is my work to try and make them feel safe and to let them know that someone is looking out for them, and that someone is me. As an escort, I don't have a lot of tools to work with aside from a neon escort vest. But over the years, I have learned that if I work hard to remain open and present, and if I focus on compassion for the patients and not anger at the protesters, I can make a big difference. A smile, a kind word, an arm around a shoulder are all powerful weapons against hate. I know, because patients tell me so, that just showing up, doing a little bit of listening, can make a huge difference to a person going through a tough time. As it turns out, this is a lesson I learned years ago on the third floor here at MUF during my years as a youth advisor. If you show up with compassion, an open heart, and a willingness to listen, you can make a difference. Thanks for listening.
Welcome Joan Bells to the pulpit.
Good morning. I'm here with a big thank you today on behalf of this family, the Zamanis. The Zamanis were forced to leave Kabul in that terrible airport evacuation, and they left behind all their assets, their family, their home, their jobs, their language, their cars. They didn't know where they were going, how they were going to live. Can you imagine being in that predicament where you just don't know what your future has in store for you? But I came and stood right here on November 7th of 2021, and I asked if you would help. RAMP, Refugee Assistance Morris Partners is a local nonprofit made up of faith-based organizations that helps people like this. And we were in collaboration with them. So I came to you and I said, would you help? And your response was overwhelming. Not only would you help, but you would take on big jobs. Sandra Persichetti and Tom and Donna Perch went out and found an apartment in Boonton, where this family still lives, and Ramp paid the rent. Paul Snellgrove and his team rounded up furniture from all over New Jersey and stored it, and then on moving day, they moved it in. Toby Tyler agreed to be in charge of transportation, and 4 mornings a week, he came and took grandfather Karim and husband Hassan to ESL classes, and they did that for 8 months. At the end of that, I said, well, now we've graduated from ESL, but now Hassan has a job and he has no car. And Toby said, all right, the team will do that. And so people showed up. The people from the fellowship showed up at 6:30 in the morning, 5 days a week, and took him to work. Could we have the next picture, please? This is baby Mahia. Baby Mahia was born with 3 holes in her heart, profoundly deaf, and developmental challenges. We didn't know that when we agreed to take on this family. More about her later. The next picture, please. This is Paul Snellgrove and his family. Maybe you recognize, and his team. Maybe you recognize Joe Erhane, yes. They are actually moving furniture into the house. And in the next picture, we'll see Barbara Pekka and her family, her team, and they are making beds, putting pots and pans and dishes on the shelves, hanging curtains, doing all the things you do to make a house into a home. Nina Nemeth and her team created a sign-up genius so that things like sheets and pots and pans and rugs and non-furniture items could be donated. And Beth Hayward and her husband, Steve Parker, agreed to be in charge of the medical aspects of the family, not knowing about Mahia's problems. Now, you've probably tried to find a new doctor yourself and been told, oh yes, new patient, 5 months, we'll get around to you. Well, Beth had to find a cardiologist, a nephrologist, an audiologist, a physical therapist, a speech therapist, and on, who would be able to care for a pediatric specialist who was local and who would take Medicaid and who would take United Healthcare. That was not an easy job, but she did it. She managed to get for baby Mahia first a hearing aid, which is what you have to do before you can get a cochlear implant. And I think 3 of the sweetest words I ever heard were from Mom Freshta. She said to me, Mahia can hear. So this child was not destined to be deaf all her life, and she now is enrolled full-time at the Mountain Lakes School for Hard of Hearing Children, and she's talking, she's hearing. Today, the Zamani family are completely independent. They have a car which was donated. Husband has a job in air conditioning, which is what he had done in Afghanistan at the U.S. Embassy, which is why he had a target on his back by the Taliban. So if he hadn't left, he might very well have been killed. This all happened because of the UU's association with RAMP. And Ramp has been in business now for about 7 years. This is the 8th family we worked with. We're now working with family number 9. And Alex, if we could have the next picture, please. This is the Marshalls. They were staying at my house while we waited for their apartment to be ready. Mrs. Marshall was very pregnant and didn't speak English, so we played croquet on my front lawn. And when it rained, we played pick-up sticks. You don't need any English for that. And I'm happy to say this family is now living independently, and because he is working for the U.S. military, he was able to bring his entire family here. So by our helping these 2 people, another half a dozen were able to come. Next picture, please, Alex. This is Fariba and Ali. They came here because they had worked in the U.S. consulate also, would have had a target on their back if they hadn't been helped. He also works for the U.S. military, and right now, family number 9 that we're helping are the parents of Ali. I'm sorry, the parents of Fariba. So our good deeds are extended. One more picture, please. This is Akhtar and Noor. They were the 2nd family that we helped. They are now completely independent. They've been here 5 years and have applied and gotten their citizenship. So one other story that sort of gives me goosebumps is Fresh, the mom, told me that she knew of 2 other families that came from Afghanistan just when they came, in the same circumstances, but they did not. The other families did not have help from RAMP. And she said those families could not make it financially, and they had to go back to Afghanistan. Yes. And she said, that would have been us without the help of RAMP. So when you think of moving the needle, changing a life, this kind of activity really does it. And if you are thinking about learning about new cultures, new religions, new climates, seeing how other people live, you don't have to get on a plane and fly across the world. Right here, you can learn about new people and do really amazing things. I will be outside, as I was on November 7th of 2021, and people signed up then. This morning, a woman signed up and she said, I am an Arab-speaking psychotherapist. Can I help? I said, oh, yes, indeed. Yes, you can. She said, and I can do translating. So it is kindnesses like that that make it possible for us to welcome these families. One last thing. I've now asked for your time and your talent. Now I'm going to ask for your blood. You may remember some time ago, Zella Geltman used to conduct blood drives here. And the blood drive people would come before and after each of our services on a Sunday, and in a half an hour you could give your pint of blood and be on your way. Well, there's a dire need again, and we stopped doing it during COVID, and because Zella could no longer do it. And we're going to start again on September 10th, the day of our in-gathering, thank you. We will have a truck here, and Franklin will be signing people up online. I'll be out there with a clipboard to sign up the few weeks in prior. So we welcome you to social justice by partaking. Thank you.
It's time for our offertory now. Our offering will be split 50-50 with Morris Together that Franklin described when he was talking. You can give in the basket, you can give via text, or you can give online, and the URL is in your order of service. During the offertory, we're going to be hearing some music from Dan. He is going to be memorializing and celebrating the life of Harry Belafonte, who, of course, we just lost. The song Deo expresses Mr. Belafonte's support for labor and for the honor of the workers.
So pleased to welcome Brooke Donaldson to the pulpit.
Good morning, everyone. About 6 years ago, I was upstairs as a youth advisor. I'm not sure what we were teaching that particular day, but my counterpart, another advisor, began talking about people with disabilities, and he mentioned differently abled people. It was then, without hesitation, that one of our youth gently corrected him. "You should just say disabled," they quipped. The advisor pushed back. No, it's a way to be more inclusive." "No, it's a euphemism to make non-disabled people feel good." I was a little startled. Often we had conversations that were edgy, forward-thinking, contemplative, and thought-provoking, but we had never had a conversation that felt so tense and in disagreement about how best to be inclusive, a keystone principle to any UU. As a disabled youth, I prefer you use the word disabled. The advisor sat back, took in the guidance, and the conversation moved forward. It seemed to be an agree to disagree moment, but my brain began to reel. I had also heard the term differently abled used prior to that moment, but I didn't know that it was bad or ill-intentioned, so I started right then to learn about disability justice. Shortly after that initial conversation, I was still working as a guide dog mobility instructor, and I was assigned a student named Haben Gurma, who was coming for her second guide dog. I didn't realize at the time how big of a deal Haben was in the disability rights world because I wasn't yet immersed in that world myself. But looking back, I probably should have had an idea. Haben is the first deafblind person to graduate Harvard Law. She had been working previously as a lawyer and now as a disability advocate and speaker. A year later, her first book was set to be published. In addition to her book, she had done a TED Talk, poked fun at Obama for his typing as he conversed with her with a Braille keyboard, and she was flying into class at the CNI later than all of the other students because she was coming straight from meeting with Chancellor Merkel. I immediately found myself drawn to the conversations she was having with other students. I started to take part in these conversations about person-first language and whether we should use it, a fraught debate. Language usage, barriers to disabled people, accessibility or lack thereof, and a brand new word to me, ableism. Ableism is defined as the discrimination of and social prejudice against people with disabilities based on the belief that typical abilities are superior. Ableism is as vast as any oppression and can be found in every nook and cranny of the world, even here at MUF. Non-disabled people may pity disabled people, thinking they want to be cured or healed of their disability. It may be assumed that a disabled person can't do things for themselves. If you've ever met my wife, please don't ever tell her she can't do anything, because she will prove you wrong. They might be told they are inspirations or so brave for doing things that a non-disabled person would never be called inspirational for, like crossing the street independently or just existing. But more often, I hear ableism in our language and how disability status is communicated. You may have heard the term special needs to describe school students that have additional or different educational requirements. Even the National Center on Disability says we should not use that language. Disability advocates say that avoiding the use of the word disabled and using terms like special needs only leads to further stigmatization of disabled people. Haben would say that her only special needs are those of fresh-picked figs. As a native Californian, anything less is non-negotiable. Those conversations with Haben, one of the world's leading disability advocates, were transformative for me. Congruently, I was dating Candace, and while in the throes of that early relationship, I started to see firsthand, to put it lightly, the crap that permanently disabled people have to deal with on a daily basis. Nurses running away from you when they see you approach with your highly trained service dog, other medical professionals asking everyone else about your medical information when you're in the room but you, people invading your personal space to physically manipulate you to go where they want you to go instead of providing decent verbal directions, websites that aren't designed accessibly so you can't access critical information, management banning access to public accommodations such as restaurants and hotels, people assuming you can't take the stairs or escalator when mobility is not your disability. Or my favorite, so what would she like to eat? Well, I'm not sure, but she is right there, so you could ask her. In 2021, I moved from the physical accessibility space into the digital accessibility realm. I started at US Bank as an accessibility consultant where I ensure all people with disabilities can access digital content. Moving into that career has taught me more about disability advocacy, and I strive to be anti-ableist. I know I'm not perfect. I absolutely have slip-ups on this journey of social justice, but I try to continuously learn and improve. And so I now invite you to also go on your own social justice journey around ableism. You need not go to a rally or protest, although those things are great and impactful. But you can start here at MUF. And you can start by taking the words special needs out of your lexicon. Read Haben's book, Google the word ableism. And if you want to be anti-ableist here specifically at MUF, here are 5 things that you can do. Ask all people if they need assistance before assuming they do, and don't get offended if they don't accept your offer. Talk directly to disabled people, not their spouse, caregiver, or friend. Listen to disabled people and hear what their very unspecial needs are, such as accessible entrances. Don't make assumptions about disabilities and the people who have them. And please don't park in the accessible lot unless you are disabled or are accompanying someone with a disability. Little efforts like choosing where you park will help us continue to build a beloved community that welcomes both disabled and non-disabled people alike. Thank you. Please rise in body and spirit for song 1028, Fire of Commitment.
Hearts and spirits, and to face
Please be seated. So, congregation, this would be the second Sunday in a row in which I have learned that you have been saving lives. What you do matters. This place matters so much. Literally saving lives. I am so honored and grateful to be with you in these 2 years we call an interim. You bring light to each other's lives. You bring light, hope, love to the world, to each other. The world needs it. We all need it. Keep being the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We need you. Go in peace, be in peace. See you again next Sunday.